innovations of the 1920s. Starting first with art and literature, American artists and writers challenged traditional ideas as they searched for meaning in the modern world. For example, American painter John Marin drew on urban dynamics of New York City for inspiration. Here, this painting is his interpretation of the Brooklyn Bridge. Charles Sheeler applied the influences of photography and the geometric forms of Cubism to urban and rural landscapes. Edward Hopper revived visual accuracy of realism, and his paintings conveyed a modern sense of disenchantment and isolation. Georgia O'Keeffe focused on landscapes and flowers of the Southwest. American writer and poet Carl Sandburg used common language to glorify the Midwest. Willa Cather wrote about life on the Great Plains. There's a group of writers known as the Lost Generation. These were American writers disillusioned by World War I and the emerging consumer society of the 1920s, and they actually went to Paris to do most of their work. On the left is pictured Ernest Hemingway, on the right is F. Scott Fitzgerald. The 1920s was also a time that saw the advent and the really growth of professional sports. Professional sports had been around. Professional baseball had been around for a few decades before the 1920s. And football had some earlier beginnings, but really professional sports really came into their own during the 1920s. Football, kind of symbolized by Red Grange, played for the Chicago Bears, was a very famous college athlete and really helped to stabilize the National Football League and really got it going on the path to become what it is today. Jack Dempsey was a very successful heavyweight boxer and very popular, drew huge crowds, tens of thousands of people, if not in the hundreds of thousands of people, would watch boxing matches that he would be in. Probably the most famous professional athlete then and perhaps still today is Babe Ruth. In baseball was the highest paid and most successful professional baseball player of the 20s and still known today. Movies really, though there had been movies around for a couple of decades before the 1920s, it was during the 1920s that film attendance really became as big as it was and really helped create the movie industry to be a major force. Some famous movies of the time period was Metropolis, 1927, Nosferatu, 1922, and this would be a Dracula story. Wings, 1927, World War I story. It's kind of that big movie spectacular with lots of action scenes in it. And Charlie Chaplin in The Gold Rush, 1925, probably the biggest star of the movies of the 1920s. And that's your big show for today.